Hi guys, my name is Justin Morella, and this is my Drawing Connections One video. I did mine kind of looking at the integration of LGB and deployment and redeployment from combat. I spent 3 years in the military in the 82nd Airborne Infantry in the U.S. Army. I deployed to Iraq in 2003, so I have a little bit of knowledge, but I'm learning a lot. There's some things that didn't exist when I was in that now I'm learning more. So anyway, I'm excited to share my presentation with you guys. Okay, so drawing connections, integration, deployment, and redeployment. Okay, we're going to start with integration of LGB service members. There's no clear number of LGB service members. That struck me as interesting that they hadn't done an in-depth look. It makes sense though when I get to the second point. There's still hesitation on behalf of LGB members, and that makes a lot of sense. Especially when you have an organization, as powerful as the military that for years was very open in not being accepted. You know, why would you want to come out, even though they're saying, on paperwork, that, hey, we are accepting now and you can be openly a member of the LGBT community. Why would you trust that? And I understand, and that poses a difficulty for social workers. Even with the challenges that the military branches face, much progress has been made, much more growth needed, though. Yeah. So what I mean by that is there has been a lot of progress made since, President Obama initiated this change. And what I mean by that is when I served in the height of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, there was zero tolerance for being openly homosexual in the military. We had an incident in my unit where a gentleman, it was discovered by our chain of command. He was in my platoon, that he was homosexual, and he was chaptered out, separated from the military within 3 to 4 weeks. And if you've served, you know that no one is separated that quickly. Usually it takes months to be removed from military service. So yeah, and then a few months later, I overheard the non-commissioned officers in my platoon talking about the situation, and he was referred to as an F and F by the platoon sergeant, who now happens to be a high-ranking sergeant major. And so I can see why there's hesitation. The personal bias still probably exists, and while it's unfair, I understand the hesitation by homosexual service members. And I'm just hoping that as time goes, as people grow, that the military just gets better at integrating deployment and redeployment. Military units develop resources like family readiness groups, we refer to as FRG, to assist with families while the unit is deployed. The FRG was pretty extensive when I deployed. It had its own chain of command structure. It had usually the commander's wife was the commander, and it was pretty good at disseminating information to the family members, about what was going on with deployment, any milestones coming up, redeployment, etc. Assisted if they could financially, or just help with carpools and raising kids, and that was something that they did to support the families while we were deployed. Service members need to be trained for redeployment. I really enjoyed the Hector Garcia's TED Talk, and I fully agree with him that there's a lot of focus put on into war fighting, into mastering your job in the military, and that's good. That's what your job is. There's really not much focus when it comes to coming home. It's kind of, hey, here you go, goodbye. When I was separating from the military, there was zero focus on me. They were redeploying back to Iraq. We'd only been home 7-8 months, and it was pretty much, here you go, specialist. Here's your stack of papers. Go get it done. So I definitely think the military needs to focus and be better prepared for getting people home. He had mentioned that one of his clients, 3 days after coming back from overseas, he was at a soccer game. I can really identify with that. I remember clearing a village in Iraq, and about 2-3 weeks later, I was at a fraternity party in Southern California. And it was a total change of pace, and it really was uncomfortable for me. I was not prepared to come home. Deployments pose challenges for the families as well as the person deployed. And that goes without saying. Um, the families, they really suffer the brunt of it. When I served, I was a single male. I didn't get, the stress that deploying and serving in the military puts on a family, and not just the deployments. I mean, we would go to the field for 10 days. You weren't allowed to bring a cell phone. And imagine not being able to talk to your spouse for 10 days and dealing with the stress of, you know, soccer practice and all the kids' activities, your own activities. It's got to be stressful for the families. Medical care continues after service member separates from the military. There's a very extensive VA network, and it needs a lot of improvement. And that's supposed to address injuries, that, veterans acquire while they serve, whether they be mental or physical injuries. And I don't think there's much put into preparing you for the VA network when you leave the military. And I'll get a little bit more into that in my next slide. Special attention needs to be made for the care of rural veterans. I really enjoyed this journal article too, because I just had never put two and two together. You have limited resources in the rural areas for veterans, but you have a higher percentage of veterans come from the rural areas. So, that's an interesting dynamic there. And I know one thing that is positive. I know there's been bills passed since that article came out that are attempting to address it. So that's good that there's progress made on that point. Implications for social work. Social workers need to have an understanding of military culture. And that goes without saying. You're going to be dealing with people that come from a subculture that you might not understand. And it's important that you have an understanding of it, that you understand what they mean when they're talking in these acronyms and stuff. And I know it can be difficult. And that goes into my next point. There needs to be an understanding that while there are many similarities between different branches, there are also many differences. And then there are a sailor isn't a Marine isn't a soldier isn't an airman. And while we do share a lot of the same hardships and similarities, there's also many differences. So, for instance, you could call the Marine a soldier, and they might take that as a big insult. So, people need to be mindful of that and respect that. Working with service members may present ethical dilemmas. This was something I didn't think of prior, but commanders in the military have extensive power over their troops. And, in doing the readings, some of what would normally be confidential or expected to be confidential based on the NASW Code of Ethics, you're going to have to reveal to a commander. So that also goes into where I feel that, certain soldiers might not want to disclose their sexual orientation because they know it's going to become knowledge to the commander, and they want their privacy respected. So that presents a dilemma for the social worker. Who do you serve? Do you serve the commander, or do you serve the soldier or sailor, Marine, airman, etc.? Special attention needs to be made to family members who care for disabled veterans. Being a veteran's caregiver is a 24/7 job. I enjoyed that psych armor also, because again, like, I didn't, my family, I married my wife after I served. So I didn't, they didn't really deal with me when I served. And I can only imagine, these gentlemen and women come back and they're hurt, and the family has to care for them. And like I said, it's a 24/7 job. There's no sick days or vacation time. So that's something that social workers need to be mindful of, is the stress and how the trauma relates to the family members too. There needs to be education on the VA claim process. Yeah. I didn't even know what a VA claim was until I had separated for maybe a year. And there's timelines that go into this, when you can claim things with evidence, without evidence, et cetera. And social workers should be aware of this process so they can help their clients navigate it, because their military chain of command, you can't count on them, for navigating that. And here's the references I used. I used Psych Armor and the TED Talk. textbook and some different journal articles I all thought were very helpful. So anyway, that's my presentation. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I can't wait to watch some of yours, and you guys have a great day.